Amigas, ¿cómo están? Qué gusto saludarlos nuevamente. Espero que hayan dormido bien, que hayan descansado y estén listos para un día lleno de experiencias nuevas, dinámicas y mucho aprendizaje. Antes de continuar, quiero preguntar si nadie, o más bien si alguien necesita traductor, porque nuestra conferencia inicial es en inglés y vale muchísimo la pena. Entonces yo quisiera que nadie se la pierda. Muchos hacen falta. A ver, Paulo, aquí enfrente tengo 6 traductores aquí disponibles. Los demás, a quienes me falten, aquí hay 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, ya se me acabaron. Aquí afuera de la sala hay traductores simultáneos, ¿ok? Entonces, si alguien más necesita, si son muchos los que necesitan, sobre todo los chavos, chavas, allá afuera podrían tomarlo, pero entendí que los jóvenes todos ya hablan muy bien inglés, ¿verdad? Bueno, Paulo, aquí mira, aquí en el centro, al frente, sí vamos a necesitar unos cuantos más, si alguien me quiere ayudar y ya no mandamos a nadie. Muchísimas gracias, equipo. Bueno, ya les decía que hoy pues será un día de muchos aprendizajes, por supuesto, de actividades y especialmente recordarles, porque si no han visto su rol, digamos, de actividades en la aplicación, hoy tenemos workshops que se van a llevar a cabo en las salas 1 y 2 que están en la sala de congresos, en la sala de exposiciones. Muy importante que puedan prever los contenidos, de qué son los temas, para que ustedes puedan justamente elegir la que más les atraiga, el tema con el que más conecten o necesiten aprender. Para justamente dar inicio a este segundo día en este auditorio, vamos a tener una charla inspiracional. Justamente lo que pretende esta conferencia es inspirarnos a idear mejores ciudades. ¿Se puede planificar una ciudad circular? ¿Qué opinan? Sí, pues dicen que Mérida más o menos es un óvalo, ¿no? ¿Se cumplen los planes? Porque muchas veces hay gobiernos que con sociedad o solos hacen un plan de 15, de 20, de 30 años y el gobierno que sigue, pues ya se le olvidó el plan porque era de la competencia, ¿no? La pregunta también para ciudades circulares es ¿qué es una ciudad circular como tal y cómo hacer que esto funcione en la práctica, en el día a día? Vamos a explorar ejemplos de lo bueno y también de lo malo y, por supuesto, inspirar a los nuevos cambios. Voy a presentarles a nuestra primera ponente del día. Ella es Philippa Roberts, cofundadora y CEO de Binit Group desde Gran Bretaña, que está con nosotros. Welcome. Thank you, Philippa.
Gracias. Okay, so soy inglesa, and the thing about English people, I'm afraid, is that we can be famous for not speaking any other languages. We are a little bit rubbish, and sometimes we just speak English more loudly and more slowly, and sometimes with offensive local accents. So I will try not to do that today. Thank you for listening to me while I speak in my native tongue. I am trying to learn Spanish. I can order a coffee. I can't talk about circular cities. They're not doing that on Duolingo yet. So, circular cities, why do we care? I care because of these little fellows, because of sea turtles. So when I was 18, I didn't get into university. I was thinking I was going to go to Oxford. I was quite clever, and I failed to get into any university. Now, as a middle-class, white, English-speaking person, I had a free year, so I went off and I did some volunteering. And I volunteered on a sea turtle project in Costa Rica. Now, before that, I thought I was going to be an economist and work in the city and earn loads of money. And I went and worked with the sea turtles, and at the time, they were being killed by poachers, but by the plastic pollution in the seas. Now, this was 30 years ago. I was a lot younger, obviously aging well, but it changed what I was going to do with my life. And I've been working with rubbish and with bins, and I'm passionate about the stuff that we consume and the stuff we throw away as a result. So I now spend my days looking at bins. Now, in the UK, we consume a lot of stuff, but we are quite good with what we throw away. Every household has a collection, every business has a collection. And so we now have a situation of what we would call conscious littering or wish cycling. So people put bags of rubbish out, and around it, people don't want to throw things away, so they place it on top. So on our streets, you will see glass bottles put on the side because people want to recycle them, but there's nowhere for them to go. So they don't put them in the rubbish bin because they know they should be doing something better. So they place them, they wish cycle. And I started Binit because I was looking at this and thinking, this is crazy. 25 years I've been working in this sector, and still the systems that we have aren't working very well. I'm a passionate believer in a circular economy. We can't live in a linear world anymore. We can't consume and just throw things away. This stuff ends up in our natural environment where it damages it kills those sea turtles, but we will run out of resources, and we will run out of places to burn them and bury them and deal with the emissions. So what is a circular economy? It is one where the resources we have circulate at their highest value for as long as possible. It's one where we eliminate waste and pollution. But also, importantly, we've done so much damage, we need to regenerate nature. We need to do something restorative as well. We need to change the way that we consume and we dispose of the things that we use. I don't know if you're familiar with this diagram. If you're not, go away and have a look at it. It's the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. It's the classic butterfly diagram. Everything that we consume should end up in one of these two cycles, either biological or technical. I have a fantasy of a world one day where we only have two bins, things that go in a technical bin because it will just be recycled. It will be turned back into plastic and cans and fibers. And if it doesn't go in that bin, it will go in an organic, biological bin where we'll return the stuff to nature. Nothing will be thrown away. There will be no need for you to ship your waste to Europe, which I think was a fantastic thing. The best thing I've learned here in this conference, that in Europe, we're going to be dealing with the waste from the Yucatan. So two different cycles, but it also means reimagining things. So in Europe now, you could buy a washing machine, but you could also buy washes. So Miele, a German washing machine company, will say to you, how many washes do you want a week? I want to do 4 loads of washing. You pay per wash. They give you the washing machine, they give you the washing powder. The sensors in the washing machine tell you if you're using it right. They give you feedback. They say, wash a little colder, you've put too much detergent in. It's because for Miele, the longer that washing machine works, the longer it lasts, the more money they earn. So instead of buying stuff which is built to die and to run out, we have to start reimagining the things that we consume. And is there a different way? Is there a different model? One of those pictures of the rubbish that I showed you before had a Pringles tube. Okay? You can't recycle Pringles tubes. Really, really annoying. Too many materials in there. If they redesign the packaging, we could recycle it. So thinking about the things that we consume, the packaging they're in, is really important. Now, it's not just resources that are circulating, though. We need to redesign things for recycling, design things to be repaired, to be taken apart, and recycle the stuff that we can't keep reusing. But we also need to share our knowledge. We need to tell people about the things that work and the things that we go wrong, which is why conferences like this are so important. And a circular economy works because of the feedback mechanisms, because of the smart systems and the data that we collect that help us make the system more effective and more efficient. But also, I think money is important because we all have to buy into this. We all want to live in better places. And if the money doesn't circulate, if it's all taken off by massive tech companies in another country, why would we want to share our data? Why would we want them to know how many times I wash my clothes? So there has to be an element of trust, and money has to circulate as well as that knowledge and data. So back to the bins. So the picture on the left, this is central London, this is Covent Garden, and the picture on the right is Exeter in Devon in the southwest where I live. Now this is not littering, this is businesses putting their waste and recycling out for collection. And what happens is the bags get ripped open by students. Well done, students. When you're out drinking, you kick them around the streets in the evening. And by homeless people who take the cardboard out to sleep on, but then by vermin, by seagulls, by foxes, by rats. And in the UK, this litter gets into our water systems and out into the seas. It damages the natural environment. It costs us £1 billion UK a year to clean up litter and fly tipping, and we as taxpayers pay for that. So here was a problem I wanted to do something about, and I was lucky because based in Exeter, they have a vision for net zero. Net zero is a really big driver in Europe at the moment. As a country, we've set a net zero target, and most companies have set net zero targets for 2030. So that means they have to measure the carbon impact of everything they do. And this is a real driver for change at the moment. Exeter said, we have loads of vehicles, loads of heavy vehicles. What can we do about it? So we responded to the challenge and said, we want to try and reduce unnecessary bin lorry movements. They gave us a £15,000 grant, and that's how we started Binit. We set it up to try and change things. So in a typical UK city, the council, the municipality, does not collect your rubbish. You can choose anybody. It's an open, competitive market. It could be the council. It could be one of the big international companies. They're billion-pound turnover companies. You choose who you want. So what that means is that for most businesses, you have a rubbish bin, maybe you have a recycling bin. There isn't a lot of space. Our cities are old and medieval all across Europe. Bin lorries are big and heavy. And you get bin lorries going up and down the same streets, collecting from the same businesses. Contamination rates then are high because all the recycling goes in the same bin. Not as high as Buenos Aires, I heard yesterday, where their contamination rate is about 45%. In the UK, the average is 8 for recycling, but it could be as high as 30. So we asked businesses to bin it better, and we raised investment to build the tech to do this. And essentially, we get people to share bins and we manage it, and then we get the most appropriate vehicle to collect. So it could be a bin lorry, but they weigh 26 tons, and diesel bin lorries do 4 miles to the gallon. They're very inefficient. It could be a man and van driver. We're trying to target Amazon drivers at the moment because they're driving around delivering cardboard, and then we're going around picking up all that cardboard. So let's do it on the same vehicle using the spare capacity. The vehicle is there anyway. We use electric vehicles. We use cargo bike companies who are making deliveries. And sometimes it's just me and the team if we're out, because we collect small electricals, so all the chargers. How many chargers does everybody get rid of? Headphones. Collect them in small containers. And so we're recycling a lot more. Here's an example of an area we were in. So before, most of those bins were rubbish bins. There was a food bin, and it was a mess. It looked a tip. Anybody see Pimp My Ride? Do you get that over here? So we go into places and we pimp their bin stores, and we make them look nice again. And we give them lots of different separate containers, because the more you separate, the better the quality of recycling. So there are food bins, there are glass bins, there are cardboard bins. The recycling bin then is just for cans and plastic, and there's only one rubbish bin. Every week there's two less vehicle movements, and that's saving 2 tons of carbon equivalent a year just from that increased recycling, just for a small collection of businesses. And we try and make them look nice and talk a normal language. In waste, we try and make it complicated in my sector, and we come up with lots of acronyms, and in UK we call rubbish general waste. No normal person calls it general waste. We call it rubbish. It's rubbish. We try and make it simple and easy for people. All our bins have QR codes on, which is linked to an app, so everybody can tell us exactly what's going on, 24/7 customer service, and they're telling us how full the bins are, which means now we have a really nice data set. We now are a €1 million turnover company. We're servicing thousands of sites across the UK every week. And that technology and that data is the stuff that then starts to make the difference. But it doesn't have to be completely new. There's lots of really, really clever stuff out there already. We just have to use it better. We could reduce emissions by 1/3 just using the stuff we've got already better. So with the data we have, we know businesses, we've identified them by type, by size, we understand the patterns of waste that they're producing, so we can start tracking that and start making collections that are predictive. So here you have an app that means you don't have to stand in the sun while you're waiting for the bus. For us, it's so you don't have to stand in the rain. So actually, because we live in a country where the winters are long and dark and damp, when the sun comes out, we all go outside. So we are starting to see if we can see patterns between weather and hospitality businesses with outside space or near the beaches. So we can say, right, this weekend is going to be sunny, we need to start emptying their bins more, so the bins then don't overflow. We can start looking at businesses, and with the weight and the fullness, we can start to actually understand what they're throwing away and change behavior without having to go in their bins, because we know what we have, this lovely picture with this rich data set. And then we can start seeing what things are in the rubbish bin which could be recycled, because actually, apart from Pringles wrappers and crisp wrappers, most things technically can be recycled, and there is a market for most of them if you have enough. So with our data, we can say, well, here's 100 businesses with a small amount of this. If we get them together, that's quite a large amount of that. Right, now we can sell it. Now we can find somebody who wants that material to reprocess, which is what we're starting to do. But the data and the tech is clever. Are we? So these are the bins in the speakers area here. All the drinks we are given are in cans and plastic bottles. Two of the easiest things to recycle. They're worth like €1,000 a ton in Europe, okay? So they're valuable materials. Guess which one's the recycling bin? Can anyone tell? There's one that says recycling on it. I go to conferences all around the world, and every time I take pictures of the bins, and they are always like this. Like, we all want to do it, but we get the basics wrong. So I think nobody's told the cleaners, right? All the bins have black bags. So if you're a cleaner and you're taking it outside, how do you know which one has the recycling in? You don't. It will end up in the rubbish bin, and here that means it will end up being landfilled. And yet most of that is recycling. So we have this ability to create all this smart tech. We have all this data. We can do so many things. But when it comes to waste, we really forget the basics so often. The really, really basic stuff. And people aren't stupid. Hopefully, we're not stupid. But life is busy, and we need a little bit of help every now and again. So sometimes things go wrong. Has anybody heard of Thomas Midgley Jr.? Well, that's good, because if you had, you'd have ruined my story. So Thomas Midgley Jr. was an American chemist, one of my favorite stories. And he worked for General Motors. General Motors had a problem. The engines in cars knocked. They made this loud noise. So he put his big brain to the problem and thought, what can I do? And he added lead to petrol. Now, he got sick. He had to take time off while working in the lab with breathing problems, as did many of the other people in the factory when they added lead to petrol. But he solved the problem that General Motors gave him. They then moved him to a different department where they were building fridges. Now, at the time, fridges would explode accidentally. There was something in the gases that made them unstable. So they said to Thomas Midgley Jr., help us. How do we stop the fridges exploding? Who can guess what he added to fridges? So it was CFCs, which then damaged the ozone layer and created the hole in the ozone layer. They think he's the person who probably single-handedly, in his problem solving, created more human deaths through breathing problems with lead in petrol and more environmental problems with the hole in the ozone layer than anybody else. Sadly for Thomas Midgley, but luckily for us, he contracted a disease and ended up being invalided, so he created an invention to get himself out of bed and got tangled in it and accidentally killed himself. There are unintended consequences of the things that we plan and the things we try and do. And one of the things I want to get across is when we're trying to solve problems, you need to be aware that stuff doesn't always go according to plan. I live in Exeter in the southwest of Devon. The image on the left is of a tired part of town, 1960s buildings. The council decided to redevelop it. It was going to turn it into the sparkling retail park at the top, but also to bring in a new bus station and a passive house leisure centre. The developer, the Crown Estate, the royal household that owns lots of the land still in the UK, decided there is no future for retail on the high street, and they pulled out of the development. The council had already evicted all of the businesses in these tired buildings here. So they were left with an entire block with no businesses in it. So they went ahead, they did the bus station, and the leisure centre has recently opened. It's the first in the UK. It has 2 swimming pools and a leisure centre and no need for any heating or cooling. It stays at a constant temperature because it's built to passive house standards. But they had all these redundant empty buildings. And so because they didn't know what to do, they just let them out. They let them out very short rents, 1 month at a time, and no business rates, so no property taxes, while they try and figure out what to do. Now, the interesting thing is what has now happened in those buildings. So they've been taken over by businesses and charities and community projects who wouldn't be able to take the risk of a normal long rent, who possibly couldn't pay a full rent. And strangely, pretty much every single one of them is doing a circular activity. So the city has that net zero circular vision, but nobody told these businesses to come in and do that. This is no innovation project. So Magic Carpet works with disadvantaged groups and takes hardback books from libraries and schools and turns them into notebooks. Make Tank is a cultural lab for social change. It does theatre and art projects with people in the city. Positive Light projects, again, art, photography, teaching young people new skills, and much of the stuff they do is with materials that would have been waste before. There's a bakehouse, there's a cookery school, there's a library of things, which is where you pay membership and you can rent drills and vacuum cleaners and hedge cutters, things that you would only use once or twice a year and would sit in your cupboard otherwise. You go and rent them instead from a not-for-profit. There's a toy library where you can rent toys. You can rent barbecues, all these circular economy activities. There's a homeless charity that's selling vintage clothing and upcycling that clothing to make it more fashionable. And there were a load of local businesses who got a chance to try out their concepts because the rent was only for a month. And every single one of these food businesses and bars has gone on to a bigger, more sustainable premises. Not one of them has not carried on. So here's a city that had a plan, and here's something that completely backfired, a bit like me hoping to go to university. I was going to go to Oxford and earn loads of money, and now I work in bins, Couldn't be less glamorous, although it's a lot of fun, honestly. Here in the city, there was this net zero vision, and then the whole shopping bit went wrong, and they didn't know what to do. But accidentally, the people in the city have kind of gone, well, actually, we want to live differently. We do want to create a different place for us to live. It's the unintended consequences. They don't always have to go like Thomas Midgley Jr. So where does this leave us? Can we plan smart cities? There is a lot of technology out there. There is a lot of data out there. We can make our traffic flow really well, but everybody knows how to drive a car. I can stick loads of technology in bins. We have some fantastic hardware that we've developed now, but not everybody knows how to put stuff in the right bin at the moment. Is it possible? What are the things that we can learn from these places? The first one, you do need somebody with a vision. You do need somebody who can tell a story, who can say what they want that place to be like. We live in cities because we like each other. The thing that COVID has told us is that we are social creatures. We want to be together, but we want to live in places that are clean, that are safe, that are easy to get around. Somebody has to have that vision, and in the UK at the moment, a lot of that is around net zero. But be aware of the unintended consequences. So not beware, sometimes they work out great. I'm so glad I learned about sea turtles and get to do stuff like this now. It's a far more satisfying job. But as Mike Tyson said, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. And plans, frankly, nothing ever goes according to plan. So stuff will be wrong. Share it, talk about your successes, talk about your failures. But ultimately, the places we live in, the places we're trying to create, they are about us as people. So don't forget the people, and please do try and tell them what to put in the recycling bins. Thank you.
Vamos a abrir el espacio que nos pidió nuestra ponente hoy para 2 preguntas. Así que si alguien del público levanta la mano, se va a acercar un micrófono. Allá atrás hay una pregunta. ¿Te puedes poner de pie, por favor? ¿Y la otra? ¿Alguien más? Ok, aquí adelante. Gracias. Aquí al frente sería la segunda, ¿eh?
I speak English, don't worry. So but my question is very fast. You mentioned about the culture changes. Something I have seen past through the years, not only with the garbage or whatever I don't remember the word you call it, rubbish. The same situation we live with everything. Call it transportation, call it, in the industry that I'm in, we try to avoid the egg waste. And part of it is that you mentioned, you put a photo there about the recycling bins that we have over here in the Expo. At the end of the day, they only pick up the bag and throw it away as the same. And then we create more harm. So instead of trying to, how can we make that change of culture? What London or the UK are doing to change that way to do things? It seems very beautiful, the picture you put there with the beans and everything. But how is it working to you guys? That's one. The second is, how are you managing those routes? Because at the end of the day, you won't have the same amount of rubbish or garbage. You don't know, you mentioned something about the sunny days. It can become, the weather channel will say it will be sunny, in the middle of the day it will be raining, so on. How you manage those? What is your logistic behind that?
Okay, so from a cultural point of view, actually there is a lot of pressure on business in Europe now to be better. And part of it is because customers are asking for it. Customers are spending their money with businesses that are able to show their values. People leave bad packaging in the shops. If they think you've over-packaged a product in the UK, people will take the packaging out and leave it in the shop as protest. So it's partly because customers demand it, but also we have nearly full employment and reducing birth rates, and young people want to work in value-led businesses. So you're seeing businesses have pressure from their consumers, but also in trying to find staff, because young people want to work for businesses that aren't greenwashing and that they care about. So it's making business change their behavior. And that is a big driver. And because they're having to report on it, all of a sudden they're going, wow, look how much we're throwing away. This is crazy. So we're trying to get some of our data to feed into the front end. So we're working with a food manufacturer. We know all the ingredients that go in the front end and in the packaging. If we tell them what's being thrown away at the same time, they can make their process more efficient. They can make different decisions about the ingredients that they put in, all by also paying attention to the waste. So that's sort of one thing. In terms of the logistics, I don't own any vehicles. We run on an Uber model. We are very asset light, and it's because we want to be flexible to changing business needs. So I use other people's vehicles, and I know when they're coming past, and if they've got space, they tell me, and we try and get material on it. So we are trying to reduce the number of vehicles circulating, because every morning delivery vehicles come into the city and deliver all the goods for us to buy. And then every evening, the bin lorries come in empty and take away all the packaging. You could halve the number of vehicles if you just used it more smartly. And that's what we're trying to do with the businesses the companies who own the vehicles that we work with. So now we're in a situation where they will say, we have capacity, we have space on this lorry, give us some more businesses on this street. And we're starting to kind of collectively change the way those vehicles flow in a place. Okay? Was there another one? Oh, down here and then.
Thank you. And in nature, it's common to say that we don't have garbage.
Yeah.
Everything is used again in a circular way, no? But the products and the things that we have in our commune life are not designed in that way. Do you have a recommendation for young people that is here attending to the Congress in how to change the way that we design products and how we can avoid to get these garbage or these problems in the future?
I think there's two things. There's very much a role for government and for policy in just banning some products. So again, in Europe and the UK, quite a lot of single-use plastic products are being banned. You just can't sell them anymore. And it might not be effective, but it gives a very strong message. So there is a role for policy and being visionary, having that vision and working with politicians to make sure that the worst things are banned. But in terms of product redesign, I think it's such an exciting time because we have to design so much of what we consume to last and for a different model. So there is a massive market. There is a massive market to redesign these things, to be repairable, for everything like this to be taken apart, for the every element in it to be simpler. And so I think there are huge opportunities in design, in product design, and in material science at the moment. And a lot of it is how we make these complex things just simpler. We've overcomplicated so many things, like the Pringles tube, how many different layers of material in a Pringles tube? What can you do with it? Burn it, that's it. It's not that. We're clever. We are so clever and creative. But sometimes we put it in the wrong direction. We make things too complicated. And so if you take inspiration from nature, you'll make things simpler, actually. And that's quite difficult. Making complex things simple is very difficult.
Thank you, Philippa.
Thank
you, Philippa Roberts.
Afterwards.
Gracias por sus preguntas. Un aplauso, por favor.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sin duda es muy enriquecedor tener ponentes de esta envergadura con tanto conocimiento y la capacidad justamente de poder entender lo que pasa tanto en investigación como ya en concreto en proyectos en otros lugares del mundo y que podamos justamente platicarlos aquí.